Should the United States change from the imperial system to the metric system? Give a hand if you think yes. That's about half people. Why is this even an issue to talk about? Well, according to the New Scientist, the entire world, like Liberia, Myanmar, and the United States are the only countries that are using the imperial system. That's 5% of the world population. 95% use the metric system. Well, what does that mean? That 5%, they're causing inconveniences for most of the people in this world. So, and these mistakes, these inconveniences, they cause expensive mistakes and almost unnecessary. So my proposition is the imperial system has a significant negative effect on America. Here are my 3 secondary claims. My first one, the imperial system negatively affects science. The imperial system negatively affects safety. And the imperial system negatively affects people's intuitive centralization. Well, my first secondary claim, the imperial system negatively affects science. How is that? Well, for example, according to CNN, in 1999, NASA lost about $125 million on a Mars orbiter. Well, the reason for that is because one of their engineering team called Lockheed Martin, they used the imperial system to calculate it while all other engineering teams use the metric system. So in the end, the unit mismatched. So the Mars orbiter couldn't understand. So it just went off the route. And then NASA eventually lost that Mars orbiter. According to a New Scientist, it costs about $37 million for NASA to change all of its data from the imperial system to the metric system. Well, to me, that's like a reason about like a spending, because 125 is lost for a mistake. Well, my second example is that the imperial system negatively affects science is mostly in education. Well, it's a fact that Americans calculated, they learn in school with the metric system. Look at the science, the physics, the chemistry, and all that. Well, the conversions of the imperial system itself is just difficult to use. Like inches to feet is divided by 12, yards to miles is like 1760, pounds to ounce is divided by 16. What's the Fahrenheit boiling point and freezing point for Fahrenheit? Anybody? No, that's like 0 to 100 is Celsius, and Fahrenheit is 212 to 33. That's just confusing. So in the 1600, John Wilkins, when he's a creator of the metric system, he designed this for people to easy to understand for measurement. Well, according to the UK Metric Association, as well as Bill 9, and even you can agree that the metric system is way easier to use. Everything is in the multiples and subdivisions of 10. 1 meter is 100 centimeters, 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters, 1 kilogram is 1,000 kilograms. Well, that is why scientists and most people in this world use the metric system. So the Americans should change for that in the science fields. My secondary claim is about safety. The imperial system negatively affects safety. My first example is about medication overdose. According to the U.S. Metric Unit Organization, in 2004, there was an incident that a baby had stomach pain, and the doctor prescribed the baby with the medicine of 0.75 milliliters twice a day, but the pharmacist labeled the bottle 3/4 teaspoon twice a day. That's 4.9 milliliters. That will cause baby to die eventually. Luckily, the doctor found out this error early enough, so the baby was not injured. My second example is about flights. The imperial system negatively affects flight safety. According to the U.S. Metric Unit Organization, in 1999, Korean Air Flight 6316, a flight from Shanghai to Seoul, crashed shortly after takeoff. And 3 people died, 5 passengers were killed, 37 people on the ground were injured. The reason for this cause is, again, it's about the unit mismatch, the conversion error. So basically, the altitudes that were instructed to the pilots were 1,500 meters, but the crew thought it was 1,500 feet. So they reach too high, they have to drop rapidly, and they crash. My third example is about Disney. Disney roller coaster in 2003, December 5th. Space Mountain roller coaster at Tokyo Disney derailed. There's no injuries, luckily. The reason for this accident was because one of the axle broke because it is too small than the design specification. And again, it's because of unit conversion error. My third secondary claim is the imperial system negatively affect both the Americans and the foreigners' intuitive centralization. So the American, it's a fact that Americans learn math, science, and almost all subjects in the metric system. But on a daily basis, Americans still measure in the imperial system. The metric system, so basically the metric system is not reinforced outside of classroom. According to the New Scientist, consequently, while students may understand some of the concept underlying the metric system, they do not necessarily have an intuitive sense of the values of the units. That caused what? That caused the Americans, when they leave out of the US, they will have a lack of sense of measurement. As well as foreigners coming into the United States, they will have a lack of sense in measurement as well. So the metric system, also known as the SI units, which is the international system, should be reinforced in the United States so people can communicate better. Thank you.
Right, structurally things are pretty good. The proposition's identified. There's a preview of what the supporting structure is going to be. It does get a little problematic in the body of the speech in a couple of spots and toward the end, because you kind of shift your proposition to we should be changing this, and that becomes a policy proposition instead of the claim of fact that we're supposed to be talking about. The secondary claims, though, are labeled as factual claims that there is, it has a negative effect on science, a negative effect on safety, and it results in intuitive we got a problem with our intuitive centralization, which I thought was a little unclear, but as you are explaining it in the third point, it's a little bit clear. There's got to be another way of expressing this, because that just sounds like it's some jargon term that most people are going to go, huh? What are you talking about there? So there's got to be a simpler way of expressing it. Almost all of your points depend on examples to illustrate something that you're talking about without being able to generalize it a little bit more with some statistical evidence. You've got the NASA example of the miscalculation. That's 1999, so that was 18 years ago, and certainly that's an embarrassing moment in NASA's history. But where's the data that shows this continues to be a problem? It sounds to me like you've already acknowledged on most of these points that when we learn this, we learn this the metric system. We use it in our math classes. The scientists all use it. So the question then becomes, do we need to, is there a problem with knowing both systems? Do they interfere with the ability of one person to understand the other? And that's kind of what your third point is really talking about, is that people are not going to be, it's not being reinforced outside of those academic environments, and as a consequence, there's some harm that occurs there. And that, I think, you need a little bit more information on. On the safety issue, we're back to the same kind of thing here, where you've got 2 or 3 examples that certainly indicate that a problem could have occurred or did occur because there was some problem with conversion. The frequency with which people have to do conversion, I think, needs to be illustrated. Like in the science thing, if everybody in science already uses the metric system, and then why is there any conversion going on in the first place? That was not very clear. The example that you have of the pharmacist, that's probably a mistake that occurred for, I don't know what the reason is. There could be a lot of explanations for that. I'm not sure that it's the pharmacist didn't understand the metric system. It sounds to me like it could probably be the way in which the prescription was written. That's one of those things. How it got caught and how the doctor found out before there was some injury to the child, I'm not quite sure. And that was the other thing that I thought was missing, that you frequently cite these examples without telling us where they came from. I don't know where you are citing them. I've heard of a couple of these things before. The NASA example, for instance, I heard that many years ago. I heard it in 1999. It was an argument that was being made in class at the time. But that doesn't mean that you are excused from having to provide a source for these examples, and I don't think that you're doing that very consistently. All right, I'm going to stop there because we have other things to do tonight. Thank you.